Because we are the most trigger-happy cops and sheriff in the world. Because cops and courts protect them, shoot first, ask questions later. Why don't we have pepper spray, rubber bullets, beanbag guns, tasers? Why are we making cops the judge and jury that is supposed to be court and a jury's decision? PUNTA GORDA police Lee COEL decided to let his dog maul a guy for no light on his bicycle. Charlotte County Sheriff Bill PRUMMELL jail killed 5 so far. Charlotte County Sheriff executed a guy with a knife, but the ex-Charlotte County with a knife they just wounded. Why cops shoot? Sarasota shooting highlights life and death decisions. By Ben Montgomery, analysis by Connie Humberg. Time staff. When her baby was born, Natasha Clemens hugged him and kissed him and promised to God she'd protect him from the mean world. She never laid him in a crib because she needed him close. She drove him to school because she didn't trust bus drivers. She took him to church, taught him to mind his manners, to respect the police and do what they say. She constantly texted his coaches and teachers when she shipped him off to college in New Mexico on a football scholarship. She wore a t-shirt that said Rodney's mom on senior day and held his hand as they walked across the field. Helicopter parent? She was a backpack. And with her college graduate back home in Sarasota, tooling around in his mother's white Jeep Liberty with the 5-star safety rating and the gospel music in the CD player, she worried. She texted him, like she did most nights. Come home. Rodney Mitchell, 23, who worked at Kohl's department store, was on his way around 9:30 p.m. on June 11, 2012, when he saw police lights in the rear-view mirror. He pulled off US 301 and came to a stop on Washington Court, just north of Dr. Martin Luther King Way. The deputy getting out of the Crown Victoria behind Mitchell was the same age and also had gone to college on a football scholarship. Under different. In this image taken from a YouTube.com video, Miami Beach police officers shoot and kill robbery suspect David Weinset, 51, in December 2015 after the man confronted officers with a straight-edge razor. The video shows one police officer firing a taser at Weinset's chest, and almost simultaneously a second police officer firing his assault rifle at Weinset. Circumstances, they would have had a lot to talk about. Adam Shaw had made mistakes in 2.5 years with the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office. He'd been disciplined for stopping minority residents for seatbelt violations, then illegally searching their cars. Now he was part of Operation Armistice. Police were saturating North Sarasota to reduce crime. The black community scornfully called it Operation Amistad, after the slave ship. Mitchell, in the Jeep with Florida tag Godangle, was the next target. Shaw would later say he saw Mitchell wasn't wearing a seatbelt as the two passed on the road going opposite directions, even if it was nighttime and the Jeep had tinted windows. He would say the car didn't stop soon enough, and that after it stopped, the driver was moving around a lot inside. He would say the driver refused to put the car into park. What Mitchell's 16-year-old cousin remembers from the passenger seat is a white cop rushing to the driver's window and shouting, "Boy, why didn't you stop the car?" He remembers another officer walking to the front of the Jeep, the spotlight from his vehicle beaming through the windshield. He remembers Rodney Mitchell's hands on the steering wheel, and Shaw ordering him to put the car into park. He remembers his unarmed cousin moving his right hand from the wheel toward the gear shift, then the flash from a muzzle, then the sound of 4 shots. Pop, 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 pop. From stop to gunfire, 41 seconds. Natasha Clemens raced to the scene when a friend called. Police would not let her go to Mitchell, sprawled in the driver's seat, wearing his seat belt. She collapsed right there, bathed in the blue lights of the lawman who killed her only son. On June 12, 2012, the day after Mitchell died, police shot a man in Boynton Beach. They shot another 2 days later in Sunrise, then 2 days later in Melbourne, then 4 days later in Tallahassee. They shot 14 people that month and 136 people that year statewide, bank robbers and rapists, but also tourists and a security guard and a hospice nurse. You'd never know the tally. Some shootings don't make the news. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement can say how many purse snatchings there were in any given year, but not how many times officers fired on citizens. The FBI's statistics on police shootings aren't much better. No one keeps an accurate count. Embarrassing and ridiculous, FBI Director James B. Comey called the lack of data. Unacceptable, former Attorney General Eric Holder called it. For the past 3 years, shootings of unarmed black men caught on video have sparked outrage. But they are anecdotes. Without data, there's no scope. How can we fix what we can't measure? Asked Vanita Gupta, who headed the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division from 2014 to January of this year. To help fill that void, the Tampa Bay Times in September 2014 asked all of the nearly 400 law enforcement agencies in Florida for reports generated any time an officer shot someone between January 1, 2009 and December 31, 2014. The Times analyzed more than 10,000 pages of police records and combed through hundreds of media reports and court files, and conducted dozens of fresh interviews, to build Florida's most comprehensive database of police shootings. Databases compiled since the 2014 shooting death of Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, most notably by the Washington Post and the Guardian U.S. cover a shorter period of time, rely on media reports and count only those killed by police. The Times database accounts for all shootings in Florida in which someone was hit by a bullet, allowing a more comprehensive look at the numbers. It also accounts for demographics and the circumstances leading to the shootings to better understand when and why police use deadly force. The top-line findings: Florida's police shot 827 people in those 6 years, or about 1 every 2.5 days. More than half, 434, were fatal. Each year had about the same number of shootings, an average of 138. The youngest person shot was a 2-year-old Jacksonville boy in his mother's car at a Wendy's. He survived. The oldest was a deranged 80-year-old man who shot at an officer before the officer fired back. He, too, lived. Nearly a fifth of the people shot, 156, were unarmed, no gun, no knife, no vehicle. And half of those were black, in a state where blacks make up just 15% of the population. That means unarmed black people were nearly 8 times as likely to be shot by police than whites. 112 people shot were believed to have driven toward police officers or otherwise used a vehicle as a weapon. Most of the shootings seem justified. While millions of interactions are peaceful, we give police the authority to kill and the benefit of the doubt, and we expect them to use violence judiciously to protect the public and themselves. More often than not they do. And policing can be dangerous. In the same 6 years, 23 officers were killed in the state, according to the FDLE. But then there are cases like Rodney Mitchell's. They highlight systemic problems that lead to questionable shootings, police operations that target minority neighborhoods, dubious traffic stops and nervous cops who rush to judgment, and bad decisions by police that put them in harm's way so they feel forced to shoot. In the worst cases, officers lie. They change their stories, tamper with evidence. They can kill an unarmed man lying on his back. And no matter what they've done, they almost certainly won't be charged with a crime, the Times found. Only once in the 6 years and 827 shootings analyzed was an on-duty cop charged with a crime for shooting someone. It got thrown out of court. On-duty police are more likely to face criminal charges if they shoot and miss. Many of the shootings were avoidable and unnecessary. Those tend to be the ones that make national news and spark protests. Lawful, but awful, is what Chuck Wexler calls them. He's executive director of a group of police executives who studies issues like use of force. He said a full third of police shootings nationwide are cases in which the suspect was unarmed or cases where police could have avoided putting themselves in harm's way, like unnecessarily standing in front of a suspect's car. Check the Times database and you'll find plenty of cases that fit Wexler's description of lawful, but awful. A 17-year-old boy with Down syndrome who took his mom's minivan for a low-speed joyride. A 60-year-old man fetching cigarettes from a car in his driveway. An autistic 18-year-old who threw 4 lava rocks at an officer. A drunk 20-year-old who was chased down and shot by an off-duty deputy after a ring-and-run prank. A man shoplifting a can of Bud Light from a gas station. An unarmed 23-year-old ex-football player driving his mother's Jeep Liberty. See Part 2 of this Tampa Bay Times story in Thursday's Sun. For the full story, see http://www.tampabay.com/wykopsud. Evidence photo of Deputy Adam Shaw from the aftermath of the June 2012 shooting of Rodney Mitchell in Sarasota. Photo courtesy of James Cook. Evidence photo of Sergeant Troy Sassy from the aftermath of the June 2012 shooting of Rodney Mitchell in Sarasota. Photo courtesy of James Cook.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us again, once again. The sheriff is going to, the sheriff will brief you again on the events that occurred on Markham Street on Sunday. Sheriff, please step up.
Good morning, everybody. As I stated on Monday, when I had more information to provide you on this investigation, I would give it to you. I'd like to first start off by saying I want to thank you for your cooperation and your patience with regard to the release of the deputies' names. This is not just a traumatic event for family and friends of Mr. Tolby, but also of those of the deputies involved. And we like them, it's my policy to give them a chance to decompress, and we also put them through what we refer to as crisis intervention stress management debriefing, because we also want to make sure that our staff is not just physically fit for work, but also that that mental well-being is taken care of. So that is why we withheld their names, to make sure that they were okay. As stated, we responded to a 911 call on Monday evening. The female caller was very hysterical on the phone. She stated she was in fear of Mr. Tolby. Mr. Tolby is heard in the background stating to bring the cops, that he was going to kill them. At one point, the caller had locked herself in the bathroom to get away from Mr. Tolby. He did access the bathroom. There were several holes in the bathroom door. One of them appeared to be from a knife. He did make access, and he spoke to the operator, made some additional threats to the operator toward law enforcement. The operator worked diligently and talked him into going outside, away from the victim in this case. And when he said he was going to wait outside, he basically made the indication that he was going to be waiting for law enforcement to respond. The first deputy on scene was Deputy Adam Freitas. He's been with us a little over a year and a half. Within a couple minutes, Deputy First Class Scott Sarver, who is a 23-year veteran, arrived with his trainee, Deputy Tony Soltis, who's just been with us 5 months. The three approached the residence. As they're approaching the residence, they parked down the road just a little ways. As they're walking past a wooded area, they heard some rustling in the bushes. They approached the front of the house, and as they started approaching the front of the house, again, they heard more rustling in the woods, and they turned, put their flashlights up, and they saw Mr. Tolby coming out of the woods holding those knives. He was holding them up in a threatening manner and moving toward them. They kept ordering him to drop the knives, to stop, but he kept advancing toward them. They were backing up, but he came within about 10 feet of them. The deputies all had their firearms drawn, at which time Deputy First Class Scott Sarver fired his weapon 8 times. Preliminary autopsy results show that we believe he was struck with all 8 rounds, but we will not know that until we get the final autopsy report. Mr. Tolby was said to have been drinking heavily all day and was highly intoxicated. Again, I will not have the blood alcohol level until we get the toxicology report back, so we won't know his blood alcohol level or if there were any other substances in his system until we get that report back, which could be anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. So at this time, I will take some questions.
So could you tell us the distance between when Mr. Tolby came out of the woods to the officers, when they started to shoot at him, what that distance was?
He was less than 10 feet,
Less than 10 feet.
which is a dangerous situation to be in when somebody is with an edge weapon.
Do you know, were the 8 shots that were fired, were they in rapid succession, or was it, 2 and then a pause, 3, and then, was it rapid succession?
Well, you can hear the shots from the 911 tape, and they all sounded pretty rapid. Normally when you're under a stressful situation like that and you are firing your weapon, it's also not uncommon for somebody to believe they only fired 2 times, but they could have emptied their magazine. In this case, Scott had fired the weapon 8 times, and it sounded like they were pretty much in succession.
And he's the only deputy that fired his weapon?
Yes.
Did he say anything as the officers approached him? Was he communicating verbally with the officers?
No, he wasn't saying anything.
Some people say that cases like these kind of illustrate the necessity for deputy body-worn cameras. Is this something that the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office is considering, or?
We've been looking into it. There's a lot of things to consider before you just strap on a camera, so it's something that we have been looking at for a while now.
Sheriff, one of the concerns, we were out in the neighborhood, spoke to some neighbors, they were wondering if gunfire was necessary in the situation. I know you guys are having an investigator looking at this. Any comment on that, as far as if it was justified or anything like that?
Well, yes, I heard there's been a lot of chatter about why we did not use less lethal. Well, you meet lethal force with lethal force. If you take out a taser, there's a chance you can hit him with the taser, but if the prongs miss or you're off target, it takes time to reload that taser, and you can close the gap of 10 feet very quickly. And you're not going to wait for the first blow to come in, because the first blow can be a fatal blow. So my deputies are not going to wait for one of their fellow deputies to get killed or injured, or for themselves to get killed or injured before somebody returns fire. You meet deadly force with deadly force, and that's how we are trained.
So you're not trained to shoot at somebody's leg?
No.
The deputies, they're all on paid leave, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What protocol follow-up going forward will they be taking?
Well, we have the investigation that's going on by our Major Crimes Unit and the State Attorney's Office to review to make sure everything was within law. And then after that, we do our internal investigation to make sure that everything was done within policy. And we also have a shoot review team, which is part of that.
I'm sorry if you've already mentioned this, but have you spoken to the deputies that were involved? How are they doing right now?
I spoke to them. They're doing well. They're doing well as beacon under the circumstances. They're doing fine. So and like I said, their mental well-being is very important to us. So we make sure we take the necessary steps to make sure that they are okay, because this is very traumatic for everybody involved.
Do you know if the deputy who fired his weapon, do you know if that was the first time he's ever had to do so in line of duty?
I believe it is.
But
It's very rare for law enforcement to ever fire their weapon during their career. And I'd like to say that it's even less here in Charlotte County. This is not something we do day in and day out, thank God.
Sheriff, have you had any feedback from the community on this case? Do you specifically on how they're feeling about?
Not me personally. Nobody's communicated with me personally. I know that some people have made some comments on social media I've heard that other people have heard some chatter. The biggest chatter is why didn't we use less lethal? And I believe I answered that.
And you said the one who did fire his weapon was the one who had been on the force for 22 years?
23 years,
23
yes.
years. Okay. Can we get those names later on?
Absolutely.
Correct.
Were there any children in or around the house?
There was I believe she was 13 years old. She was locked in her bedroom during this incident. From what we were told, she kind of locked herself in her bedroom when he started to get aggressive within the household.
And how many other people were at the residence at the time?
That was it. There were just the three of them. The caller, the child, and Mr. Tolby.
Do you know if the child is his daughter?
There is a relation.
And the caller, can you confirm, was his wife?
There is a relation. The 911 tape, if you're interested in having it, my staff is working on it now. As you know, per law, there are certain things that must be redacted, so they are working on it now, and you should have it no later than the end of the business day today. I have not time for one more question.
Sheriff, you had said that the deputies warned Tolby, right?
Yes.
This was coming at them.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Stay safe, guys.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here this morning. We had a tragic event unfold last night, shortly after 8 p.m. on Markham Street. At this time, I'm going to introduce Sheriff Bill PRUMMELL, and he'll give you some updates on that. Please be mindful there will be no questions asked at this time.
Hello. At approximately 8:10 p.m. last night, we received a 911 call regarding a domestic. Deputies responded. During the 911 call, a male was heard making threats toward deputies. As the deputies responded, they heard some noise in the woods to the left of the residence. As they approached, a male subject appeared out of the woods holding two knives, one of them quite large. He raised them up and was approaching the deputies. As the deputies began to back away and ordered him to stop, he continued advancing toward them with the knives raised. One of the deputies then fired several rounds, striking a white male who was later identified as Jacob Tolby. After he was shot, he fell to the ground. The deputies immediately rendered aid, and they used their officer down kits, but unfortunately he did succumb to his injuries. The deputies have been placed on administrative leave as policy. I did contact State Attorney Steve Russell last night at the scene. He did send an investigator out to work alongside our investigators as we work through this investigation. The deputies are doing well, and the family is doing as good as can be expected under the circumstances. I just ask that you keep them in your thoughts and prayers as we work through this tragic event. We have not had any other related calls for service with Mr. Tolby or at that residence. The only other calls for service we've had out there was related to a fire and to a dog complaint. Mr. Tolby's only known record was out of Wisconsin for a petty theft. So we have not had any run-ins with Mr. Tolby down here in Charlotte County. So as the investigation continues and we're able to provide some more information, I will provide you more information at that time. Thank you very much.
How many deputies?
There were 3.
Hey, Sheriff, we have a question about why your office, your intelligence division, is investigating private citizens for criminal investigation that happen to be activists that are overseeing your department. Why would you have your intelligence division investigate private citizens? We have done... Sir, we don't hate anyone. We love freedom and we love American people. And government is out of control. That's why you're seeing such a revolt nationwide. Why can't you just answer, why is Susan Edwards, your intelligence division, investigating private citizens? This should not happen.
Are you here to apply for a job?
Possibly I might be applying for a job, but that's irrelevant to my question. Why would you ask that question?
Well, enjoy the fair.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Excuse you?
Excuse me, sir.
So those of you that haven't
Wow.
been on a bike before,
Sheriff's getting a little too pushy. You work for us, Sheriff. Just keep that in mind. At one time we respected you, but not with that type of attitude.
Information at that time. Thank you very much.
Soon as we learn more. For now, we're live in Charlotte County. I'm Nicole.
Breaking news that we've been following overnight comes from Charlotte County. An investigation is underway there into a sheriff's deputy shooting.
We know it happened during a domestic disturbance call. Wingo is live at the scene. What are we learning this morning, Nicole?
They confronted an individual who was...
Well, Robin, Jen, this is all where it happened last night, a little about 8 o'clock last night. I went over the way to show you can see it is still an active scene right now. We do have a couple Charlotte County deputies still out here at this hour. They've been out here since it all unfolded around 8 o'clock last night. This is on Markham Street in in Englewood. Right now we're told deputies were called into this home for a domestic disturbance, but when they got here, they tell me at least one person was armed. Oh, those deputies telling us they were forced to shoot. Now, we are still waiting on gathering a little bit more information on what led up to the shooting, as well as the name of the person who was shot and killed. All we know right now for sure is that one person is dead following this overnight confrontation with deputies, but we are expecting an update with Sheriff Bill PRUMMELL this morning at 11 a.m. He'll tell us some more details on exactly what happened overnight. We'll bring you those live updates as soon as we learn more. For now, we're live in Charlotte County. I'm Nicole Valdez, Wink News Now.
Hey, Sheriff, we have a question about why your office, your intelligence division, is investigating private citizens for criminal investigation that happen to be activists that are overseeing your department. Why would you have your intelligence division investigate private citizens? We have done... Sir, we don't hate anyone. We love freedom and we love American people. And government is out of control. That's why you're seeing such a revolt nationwide. Why can't you just answer, why is Susan Edwards, your intelligence division, investigating private citizens? This should not happen.
Are you here to apply for a job?
Possibly I might be applying for a job, but that's irrelevant to my question. Why would you ask that question?
Well, enjoy the fair.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Excuse you?
Excuse me, sir.
So those of you that haven't been on a bike before,
Sheriff's getting a little too pushy. You work for us, Sheriff. Just keep that in mind. At one time we respected you, but not with that type of attitude.